Hey, what's up? I'm Jason, and today we're going to talk about how I got laid off from my first game dev job after only 3 weeks. So, this is going to be a long one, maybe. I might talk for a bit, but I'm going to go over the entire process, how I got that first job, how I got laid off so quickly, why it happened, and how it kind of turned out to be a little bit of a blessing. It wasn't great, but it didn't end up being a disaster at least. And then I want to talk a little bit about what that first day on the job is actually like, or what the first week on the job is like in two different positions. So let's just get going. Well, before we do, don't forget to share this video if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Hit like, hit subscribe. I plan on just mixing it up and going back and forth between doing very technical videos on how to do things, how to solve problems, and these more informational videos just about the game development industry in general or things that are going on that you might be just interested in. So let's get going. The first actual game dev job that I got, I really, to be honest, totally stumbled into. So at the time I was working in some software stuff, doing tools at Intel, and I happened to be an old EverQuest player. I logged in to a game that I hadn't played in, I'd say probably a year and a half, just to hop in and visit some old friends. So it was an MMORPG where you could get in, you could talk to people. You normally go in groups, and I had a lot of friends in there, so I'd get in every now and then and just say hello and chat with people. I mean, I hadn't played the game actively, like I said, for a year and a half, but I'd occasionally just drop in and say hi. Anyways, I get in. Within a minute of logging in and just seeing who of my old buddies are on, I got a message from one of the guys who had worked on the game before and was now working at a different game company. And he messaged me and just said, "Hey, you program, right? Are you interested in maybe coming and doing some QA tools for this new game that I'm working on?" I was like, of course I'm interested. Like, that sounds awesome. Sounds really exciting because at the time I'm working on these server tools, it was a lot of fun. I was coding and having a blast, learning how to do things and getting stuff to work and running stuff on real prototype dev server stuff or prototype server stuff that wasn't out yet. It was really cool new hardware and stuff, but the idea of working on a game was way, way more exciting, right? Like, get rid of the new hardware, I don't care, give me the game, I want to do that. Because I was still trying to make games in my spare time and screwing around with them and really playing a lot of games, so the idea of getting to work on it was, I was on it. So anyway, I went through a little interview process. It was relatively easy, just some stuff about C#. Again, it was tools job, so it was like writing little web-based tools in ASP.NET or little Windows tools with, it was WinForms back then. So it's just writing little tools for the game or for the designers or for the QA team. Anyway, got hired, moved, went down to get this job. So I go from Washington State down to California, moved down and get an apartment right next to the office. Or actually, no, sorry, I didn't get an apartment right. I'm getting all mixed up. Anyway, I moved in with another guy who was working on the QA team. So I'm in there in the QA team doing QA tools and QA, right? So I guess stuff kind of gets mixed up in my head. But when I started off, I was doing mostly QA stuff. So it's mostly a lot of manual testing. And then whenever I wasn't doing manual testing of stuff, so whenever there wasn't a build that needed a test run done, I was working on making tools to automate the testing process or simplify the testing process, and for the design team to be able to track down their issues and see stuff. It was really, like, when I think about it now, it was all very basic stuff. There's kind of views on top of data, on top of the database, but making it accessible to them in a way that they really wanted to view it. And so anyway, moved down, take the job, in there with, living with another guy who's on the QA team, David. David's an awesome guy. I haven't talked to him in a long time. David, if you're out there, say hi. I'd love to chat sometime. Anyway, I'm working on the tools. Stuff's going great. I'm loving it. And I was like, hey, this is freaking awesome. Other than my wife and kids are still up in Washington, just waiting to move down. So I was like, okay, I'll go figure out a place and then they'll move down. But 3 weeks in, so I'm there for 3 weeks, like having a blast, really loving it, like, oh, this is awesome. And notice comes down that the company has been, I guess, acquired by another company, and there were going to be some big changes at the company, and the office was going to move, people were going to get laid off, a whole bunch of bad stuff was going to happen, right? And I'm like, oh crap, what the hell is going on? So I asked about it, and I was like, the response I heard first was like, oh, no, there's nothing going on. Everything's fine. And then like 2 hours later, I see this, they're like, hey, company-wide meeting. Right? I was like, uh-oh, this is bad. So they have a company-wide meeting. I don't remember if it was inside or outside for this one, but they just said, yep, it's true. We're getting bought, or it wasn't really a buyout, right? It was really just SOE was kind of helping save the company financially, from what I understand. And I don't have all the details. I was 0% involved in that. Like I said, I was 3 weeks on the job in QA, so I had zero idea what was going on there. I just knew that, yeah, there were layoffs coming. Anyway, they go around and they're just telling people, hey, I think it was the next day or the next week, whatever it was, Monday, we were going to come in and find out the details. Sorry that the dates kind of, it's been so long, I can't remember exactly. But we come back and they have basically set it up so that everybody that's getting laid off comes in at some time, I think, or there were groups, basically. There were groups of people who were getting laid off and groups that weren't. And I was definitely in that group of people that was getting laid off. And I was like, crap, this is like the shortest career ever, right? I got this job, got all excited, got pumped up. I got my wife thinking, hey, we're moving, all this stuff's happening. And 3 weeks later, it's over. It's like, oh, this is terrible. Like, what am I going to do, right? But huge surprise happens, and Andy, again, another guy I haven't talked to in a long time, go out there, say hi. Andy comes over and just says, hey, just need to talk to you real quick. And she's like, hey, these, the lists for what had been done had kind of been done all long before I was there, or at least sometime before there was a concept of me working there doing stuff. And they had seen the coding stuff that I was doing tool-wise, and they were going to, they wanted to let me know that they were going to just make me a new offer and rehire me to do tool stuff if I was interested in that. And I thought, okay. I mean, I thought at first I was like, well, this is this is terrible for everybody else. Like, all these guys that I'm hanging out with all just got laid off, and now like I found out like, hey, I'm somewhat saved just because the stuff that I happened to write were things that people liked, and they also weren't really getting rid of programmers, right? So one thing, I guess this happens a lot, and I should just bring this up. When game companies have big layoffs, in my experience, they almost never lay off programmers, right? Like, sometimes they'll use it to get rid of programmers that they've kind of been wanting to get rid of, people who haven't been really doing anything, have been kind of just slacking or basically just not into it anymore. I've seen that a little bit, but in general, they just don't really seem to lay off programmers. And I think that the biggest reason for that is that the cost to ramp up and train a programmer on your engine and your stack is so expensive that it's the replacement cost is just huge. So they just try to avoid it. And in this case, it was kind of the same thing. They didn't really get rid of many programmers. I know a couple left. I don't know if they left on their own. I think that they probably did, though, that they just kind of left on their own. But also the new company was acquiring all of this team and wanted some of those programmers to go to other spots. So that meant that since I had some coding skill, I knew the game and I knew the data enough to give them basic tools to view stuff. I thought, hey, maybe you can come do these other tools where we're actually putting the stuff in. And that's kind of how it happened. So I got laid off 3 weeks in, a little severance package. It was really nice. I mean, like, as terrible as it was for everybody, like everybody was really cool about it, right? Like, and everybody that I worked with at the time was awesome. Anyway, I get rehired about a month later. So they're going through the process. They're like, yeah, we're going to send you an offer. We're going to send you an offer. I'm like, all right. I end up moving back up to Washington. So I'm like, I don't know when this is coming. It didn't happen the first week. Didn't happen the second week. I was like, all right. I can't just stay down here with a wife and kids in another state. So moved back up there, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, because just long process of acquisition and stuff. I get the offer, talk it out, and it's awesome. I moved down, and that's when I get the apartment right next to the office. So like I said, I got a little mixed up earlier, but anyway, that's when I get the apartment next to the office, move down and start as an official game developer. So I was in QA development, and now after 3 weeks, I was bumped up to tools programmer. Actually, was technically the job. So I was doing tools programming for Vanguard. And all right, this now we're going to get into the first day of actual coding, where I had a programming team with the lead telling me what to do and all kinds of stuff. Because the first time, it's just me and the QA team, and it's all relatively chill, and it's just kind of like do what I want to do. Because when I started that one at the time, my boss actually happened to be gone. I think he was on a business trip or vacation. I can't remember what it was now. Again, too old, lost track. But he was gone almost through that entire time. So he came back like the last couple days. So the new job, right, as the tools programmer, I come in and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Like all excited. I get to go sit with the programmers and set up my computer. And I think it was already kind of set up, but I'm going through the process of figuring out how to use this perforce source control and download stuff and get a build environment set up, and what the hell a build environment even is, or what that looks like in the project. Because at the time, just been doing a little bit of tool stuff, and it was all my own custom stuff. So here I'm like, how do I download, or how do I get the repository for the tools? How do I get all that stuff set up? And of course, running into all kinds of problems. But I had some guys around me who were really helpful. Adam and Sean were right next to me, and they'd answer all kinds of questions and help out any way they could. And really helped me get going with a lot of that stuff, by the way. Thanks, guys, if you're out there. But I'm getting set up, and we go into, about 10 o'clock, 10 a.m., where we have the first Scrum or stand-up meeting. And this was, I think, probably the first time I'd ever been in one, right? So in all the other places, we had meetings, but we didn't have like your standard stand-ups where they're kind of usual now, where you'll have a group of people standing around and just go person after person with what they're doing, kind of what's blocking them. Yeah, I guess that's it, right? So what are you doing? What's blocking you? Anything else important? Go. And, in a fast, ideal situation, that's kind of how you're going. And I'd never done that before, never seen it. So I'm like standing in this room, and there are a lot of programmers there. A lot of programmers who are crunching on a game that's just been released and running into performance problems, and a bunch of people just got laid off. So it's all kinds of hectic. But there's like 15 to 20 programmers in this room going around the list of the stuff that they're doing. They get to me, and I'm like, hey, I'm setting my stuff up, and it's cool being here. I just like totally terrified to even say anything. Don't know what I'm doing. Just excited to be in the room and super intimidated, right? So anyway, I forget who it was, if it was Steve or Ryan. Ryan was the lead at the time, and Steve was the guy who just knew everything and kind of one of the main guys there from the beginning. But one of them goes, hey, well, since you're doing the tool stuff, we have this tool thing that we need you to do where the data in one database. So what they wanted is, let me present the problem, and then I'll present the solution. Because I think if I present the solution, you're going to be lost just like I was at the beginning, right? So in this game, there was a database for all of the content, just a standard Microsoft SQL Server. That was like the development database. There were some tools. They ran against that development database. And then there was a development server that ran against that development database. Then there was a test server set up. So the test server ran against another database that was just a copy of the development database. And it had its own development server, and the design tools could also connect to that database. So they could they could basically connect to either one. When they wanted to put content in the game, what they had to do was go put it into the development database, set up all of the content. So they're going in there like creating the NPC, creating the items that it drops, the loot tables, the chances, the abilities, the effects on those items, and all that stuff. They do all that in the development database. It goes through a QA process. QA says it's good. The next step was to switch your tool over and do that against the other database, the test database, and redo all of that work on there. And then that was the database that actually went out. So the idea here, or the reason for it, was that stuff that hadn't been approved on the development database couldn't be pushed out to the test database, so that things went through some sort of a testing phase. Unfortunately, I'm sure you can see the problem. Like, it opens up to tons of manual bug issues, right? I mean, the reason that they wanted to address this is, you put something in once and it's fine, then you mess it up the second time around and it breaks, or the databases aren't consistent. So what's on the development database could be completely different from what's on the test database now out there. So you have to check in two sources now. You don't have a single source truth, you got two. And it's also just a ton of extra manual work, right? Like, who wants their designers doing the same thing twice? Like, everything that you have to do, you just do it twice. Why? And not only do you do it twice, but you do it twice with a big time broken in between there to just make it a lot harder. So getting rid of that process was the primary thing that they wanted me to do as a new tool programmer. Which, like, right now, to me, that sounds totally reasonable. Like, yeah, okay, I'll figure out a system for that and we'll do that. But as a new developer on a project that had no idea what the hell I was doing or what any of this meant, it was kind of overwhelming and terrifying, right? So I'm looking at it like, you want me to make a what? A system that takes data from one database and puts it in another and gets marked in some tool that I don't know the code of at all, or how I would even create it. Okay. I was like, I have no idea how to do this. So, it was, yeah, like I said, terrifying, but a lot of fun. So in this case, even though I had this crazy task to create a new tool that kind of solved this big problem, and I was completely terrified and pretty sure I wasn't going to be able to do it, it ended up working out great because I got to really start asking a lot of questions. I got to learn a lot more about databases just by working with the lead DBA there. So the DBA, Mike, was a great guy, and he spent a lot of time with me, a couple weeks, just explaining how SQL Server works, how to write queries that were good, and how to solve the problems that I really needed to solve, where I needed to keep track of data, by who was using it, when it was used, allow them to do some sort of branching, almost like you would in a Git system, where you can just commit your changes, but commit them into a branch. It's just every time they would save them into a branch. And then building a nice tool where they could push that data across to different environments and see the deltas and stuff. So it was a great experience, really, and I felt like I learned a lot from being super challenged at the beginning, but there was also just the opportunity to kind of fall and do nothing. And I think it was really a combination of being super interested in the project and just really, really, really wanting to work on it and do it, and thinking like, even though I'm just like making this little data tool, I'm working on this game and I'm having a blast, right? Like, I'm doing something that's a lot of fun and I can see the effects. I also really liked seeing the effects of just working on tools with game designers, because if you've ever had the opportunity to do it, when you make cool tools for game designers, they get really excited and they really seem to like it. And they're usually pretty vocal about how much they like it and how much it helps. And you can see kind of the benefit that they get, the payoff that they get. And then you'll get the same thing just making new features and functionality in your games too. It's not just on tools, but if you're just doing tool stuff, you still get that same excitement. But the excitement comes like directly from the designers, not just from players who you don't interact with daily. It comes from the people that you're talking to every day. So working on tools is an awesome way to kind of get in and get started. So if anybody's thinking like, hey, I want to get into game development, but I don't necessarily want to do tool stuff. I want to do whatever this is. Like, hey, if your skill set supports you creating some game dev tools, like, you should definitely give it a go. Try it out. It's a lot of fun. And then you can always branch into whatever you want. Like I said, I started with tool stuff, and I kept doing that for, it's probably like the first 2 years or so, where I almost exclusively did tooling work, and then slowly just started kind of wanting to see my tooling changes reflected in game code faster. Kind of figured out, how does that work? How do we go through that process of hooking stuff up that's in this data here to actually work in the game? And I'll probably talk about that later, because it's a huge, long topic, especially when it comes to MMO building and stuff. But anyway, I think I've babbled on a bit about my my first couple days and getting laid off, and just how kind of crazy it was. I wouldn't expect your experience to necessarily be like that. Hopefully it's a little bit calmer and you just get hired and everything goes great and people just kind of mentor you and teach you and learn stuff and have a great time. And if anybody has a really interesting story about their first game dev job, I'd kind of be interested in hearing that. I think I'd like to put together just a little collection of interesting ones and get an idea of what it's like for everyone. Because I mean, I know what it's like for me and the couple dozen developers I've talked to or seen come in and start new jobs as game developers. But I'd love to just get a bigger sample size and talk to more people and see what it's like for everybody else out there. Anyway, I'm going to stop now. So I want to say thanks to everybody. Again, special thanks to everybody on Patreon. Always awesome. Really love it. I'm just amazed by that stuff. And if you're watching and you don't mind hitting share, that's great too. Just share it on Facebook or whatever other thing people share stuff on now. I don't know. All right, thanks. Bye.